We'll get going. Other people will be coming in, and other people are watching by way of the internet. Had a number of strong comments. They're very thankful, and thankful to the tech crew who pulled it all together. So it's not just us, but other people are watching online as well. If you'd like to have a review, it's on our website or on the church app, and it's very easy to find. So took a little while to get the first week up, but now we've gone into week 2. I was thinking a little bit after your class last week, and I brought along some of my favorite books. I read these all the time to my grandkids who are living with me right now. But anyway, I thought, it's interesting that Daniel has such sort of a wide range of stories that we're familiar with. So I bring a few of these out. These are 3 men who walked in fire. Some good words. Once you get to be 60, you revert back to these books. And another one, the fiery furnace. Daniel and the roaring lions. Is that an addition to the text? I suppose not. Roaring lions. And Daniel in the lion's den. And this one I just read last week. The braggy king of Babylon. I don't know if you're familiar with these titles. The braggy king of Babylon. Well, we're stumping the professor here.
Braggy?
Braggy.
As in, I brag a lot?
I brag a lot, yes. Maybe you want to take that one home with you and freshen up a little bit on that particular section. So, anyway, with that, I'll give you Dr. Lorenz. So this is our second session, and once again, we're going to be going up until Palm Sunday or so. So the next number of weeks. So with that, then I give you Dr. Lorenz. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Wisco was here, Wisconsin Lutheran High School, and truth be told, the first time I created a course on Daniel was for the teachers at Wisconsin Lutheran College. That was a generation ago. And so what you get is the result of many years of teaching the Bible since that time. I gave you one very colorful picture today because we're going to be looking at chapters 2 and 7. Typical for Daniel, these 2 chapters are connected. They tell virtually the same message, but in a different modality. You can see that on the picture. You can see numbers 3 and 1 are connected with a statue, and the numbers 2 and 4 are connected with creatures. But let's not get off the top. We'll get into that by looking at these 2 chapters. Daniel is remarkable because of the way it captures the imagination of those who hear it and read it and study it. Pastor was absolutely correct when he showed you those little books. What child does not enjoy the story of Daniel in the lion's den? What child doesn't enjoy the story of the 3 men in the fiery furnace? It's kind of dangerous, but then again, it turns out okay. Kids like those stories. And when we escape the dangers of this world, we can think of Daniel. Let me ask you a question, though. In your lifetime, can any one of you or a couple of you share a story of when the world scared the bejeebers out of you? When you were young, yes?
Right now.
Right now? Okay, well that's pretty on point. I can tell you, I went to Calvary Lutheran grade school in Thiensville, and it was back in the 50s. And I got up early enough to see the first atomic bomb video or whatever it was on TV. And they had these buildings and they had cardboard men, and it showed how they were all blown away. And then the teacher said, when I give you the signal, you put your hands over your head and you put your... What? Yeah, I lived in terror of an atomic attack during the 1950s. Because if we remember, some of us who lived at that time, the two superpowers had this terrible weapon, thankfully, have not used it. But back then we didn't know, it was new. And it had been used on the Japanese. I was a high school principal, and I asked this question of high school kids in the 1980s. You know what it was that terrified them? AIDS. Many of them thought they weren't going to live to adulthood because the AIDS epidemic would somehow get to them and rob them of their life. What is it today? Any suggestions? Should somebody throw something out? Oh, yeah, sure. And yet, if you are a historian at all and you read, by no means is this pandemic the worst that the world has ever seen. Read sometime about the Black Death in Europe, where 1 out of every 30 people died, and they didn't understand what was going on. And I have several people's names on gravestones in Lomira, where some of my family is buried, from the flu epidemic in 1918. Anybody have any connection with that? That was another time that was scary. But let's get into our story of Daniel 2 and 7. These 2 chapters were written in the Aramaic language because they are messages about the world that scares us, the world that scares our children. Chapters 1 and 12, which are at the beginning and end of Daniel, they're written in God's language, Hebrew. But now, for a while, we're going to be in this Aramaic language. The summary of chapter 2 is about a statue and a stone. Both of them are important. The statue probably grabs our attention, and that's why I gave you a picture. But actually, the stone is more important, and I hope you see that. This is our outline that I've circled it there, a vision of world history from the vantage point of Daniel, who lived in the 600s before Christ. And you can see that number 7, it's the 4 beasts, is also a vision of world history. That's what we're going to cover today. In the 2nd year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, that very mighty, capable king had a dream. Do dreams bother you? I would say in most of my life, not. But my wife will tell you that this morning I had a dream about having to get a group of Lutheran choral directors to tailor-make their concert into the allotted time. It was terrible. It was real. It was frightening because I have been a principal and I've had to deal with people who were in charge of the music department, and they're scary people. Well, already, his spirit was troubled, but sleep came upon him, so thank goodness the guy fell asleep. Now notice the date there is 603 BC. God's people are still in Jerusalem. The place has not been destroyed yet. Nebuchadnezzar had to come 3 times. He really was not interested in destroying Jerusalem. But those Jewish people, They just didn't know how to play the game of international politics. So finally he got fed up in 586 and he leveled the temple and leveled the city and carted off all the important people to Babylon. Daniel, we already know from last week, as a teenager, left his home and was taken sort of like a hostage to Babylon, where he was put in a prep school. Remember, 3 years? And he didn't want to drink the booze of the king, and he didn't want to eat the king's non-kosher food, so he begged to have veggies and water. And he did it in a humble way. He didn't get his mentors all upset. And it turned out when graduation came and Daniel and his 3 friends were presented to Nebuchadnezzar, they ranked 10 times better than the next guys. It's a great story. Be faithful to your God and be faithful to his word, and he will bless you. There's a message that for children in that part of the story. The king said to summon the by the way, there's something about Daniel and his style of writing typical of his time, and that is it loves long lists of similar things. And you'd say, well, you told us that once before. Don't quarrel with the author. He just likes repeating. And that's a factor in Hebrew writing, repetition. Scholars today who try to debunk the Old Testament make a big deal of repetition. They show it's primitive and the people hadn't really, they're wrong. They're dead wrong. They just don't understand. Repetition is something that mothers know all about. You tell your kids something once and then they do it? Anila, do they? No, they do it because for Hirsch they do it. But usually you have to tell children more than once before they catch on. All right, so the king, he's troubled by this dream. Summoned the magicians, the soothsayers, the sorcerers. The Chaldeans were a certain kind of delvers into the future to relate to the king his dream. So they came and stood before the king. All right, here's the thing. The wise guys of Babylon, and actually Daniel was counted as one of the wise guys. He didn't set the rules. So all these soothsayers and these magicians and these guys that do hokey pokey, they're all in the same category with Daniel. They're all summoned because the king needs to know what the dream is about. The king said to them, I dreamt a dream. My spirit was troubled. The Chaldeans said to the king in Aramaic, Your Majesty, may you live forever. Bootlickers, notice? Your Majesty, may you live forever, which is impossible. But that's what you say to the king. Tell the dream to your servants and we will explain its meaning. That's pretty straightforward. I think I would come to the king with that kind of a proposition. But the king, he doesn't want to tell the dream. He doesn't know the dream. He wants them to tell what the dream was and what it means. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the matter for me is certain. I made up my mind. I'm not going to change my mind. If you do not make to me known to me the dream and its meaning, you shall be made into body parts. Well, this is a little bit like The Godfather, the scene where the horse's head ends up in. All right, you know what I mean. Kind of brutal. But that's the way the ancient people talked, and that's what they did. The king had perfect power to chop up all these guys into pieces. And your houses will be made into a pile of rubble. We know that from modern history, governments have used that as an incentive for people to come around and do it the government way. You know, do it our way, we get bulldozers in. However, if you reveal the dream and its meaning, You will receive gifts, reward, great honor from me. So for the king, it was simple. You have a choice. You tell me the dream and what it means, or you can be cut up into little pieces, or if you do it my way, you'll be rewarded. They answered a second time and said, let the king tell the dream to his servants. Just tell us the dream, and we will explain its meaning. The king answered and said, now I know for sure that you are buying time because you see that the matter is certain for me. You guys are supposed to be capable of knowing secret things and working with magic and sorcery and all that stuff. Don't give me this stuff. You're buying time. That's how Nebuchadnezzar looked at it. He was no fool. If you do not make the dream known to me, there's only one decree, only one way out. You have devised a lying and corrupt response to stand before me or say before me until the time changes. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I will know that you are able to reveal to me its meaning. Oh, no, he wasn't that spiritual yet. Yeah, he actually had a dream. I believe that Nebuchadnezzar was on a spiritual journey. And we have a chapter in Daniel where the king talks. And that's why I'm of the opinion personally that I'll meet him in glory someday. This guy. But no. He couldn't remember the dream. Do you ever wake up and have a bad dream and you can't remember what it was? Oh, then you understand. That's the background of this. Okay. The Chaldeans answered the king, there's nobody on earth who is able to reveal the king's matter, since no great and powerful king has ever requested a matter like this from any magician, soothsayer, or Chaldean. The matter that the king requests is difficult, impossible, and there is no one else who can reveal it to the king except gods. They had gods. Bel, Marduk, Sin, Nilgashar, there's a whole bunch of Babylonian gods. They had their gods. And they believed that those gods knew these things. But then they said here, but no one else can reveal it to the king except the gods whose dwelling is not mortal flesh. We don't go down to the corner and have Starbucks with them. They're gods. So you're asking something impossible. Because of this, the king became very angry and enraged. He gave the order to destroy. There it is. The order has gone out, chopped up, and bulldozed. The decree was issued, and the wise men were in the process of being executed. So remember, Daniel belongs to this group, whether he wanted to be part of that group or not. And so they're desperate. They say, hey, maybe this guy, Daniel, remember he graduated first in the class? And so did his friends. Maybe he knows the way out of this. Then Daniel replied with prudent judgment to Arioch. Never met, he wasn't introduced, but he's the guy who chops heads. And this is a very good picture. Who had gone out to execute the wise men of Babylon. He said to Arioch, the king's officer, why is the decree so harsh from the king? Daniel says, I don't know the backstory to this whole thing. Can you tell me? Then Daniel entered the court and requested from King Nebuchadnezzar that he would give him time so that he could reveal the meaning of the... That's pretty gutsy on Daniel's part. He's already said, I don't want any excuses. Tell me the dream and its meaning, or off with your head. Daniel, however, and you're going to find out, his time he wanted was to pray to his God. Because all the way through the book of Daniel, you'll never find Daniel doing an amazing thing and then bragging about it. He will always tell people, it's not me that figures these things out, but God reveals them to me. And I have a feeling that your pastor is like that. Where is he? Over there. You're not particularly smart, are you?
That's my wife.
But what I mean is that when it comes down to it and you talk to your people about everlasting things and things that really count, you have to say, this doesn't come from me. I didn't, it's not because I have a seminary education and I happen to be a doctor and I've lived a long life. No, you say, this saith the Lord, right? This is what Daniel is looking for. Time to, who do you think he's going to get together with? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, his 3 co-graduates who were ranked high. Daniel went to his house and explained the matter to, and this is their Hebrew names, Hananiah. Hanan is grace, it's a wonderful name. Azariah, the strength of Jehovah. And Mishael, he who is as God is. That's how their Hebrew names mean. But they had been given Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Those are pagan names. So they might seek mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery so that they might not destroy Daniel and his companions with the rest of the wise men. Daniel doesn't care only about his own skin. He is a man of God who is concerned about even the soothsayers and Chaldeans. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel by whom? By God. In a vision at night. So the king got the vision. Now Daniel got the duplicate dream. And Daniel blessed the God of heaven. So he didn't forget to say, thank you, God, for coming through. May the name of God be blessed forever and ever, because wisdom and power are his. There you have the prophet giving credit where credit is due. He changes times and eras. Now Daniel is waxing scholarly. God is in charge of history. He gives wisdom to wise people and knowledge to those who know discernment. He reveals deep things and hidden things. He knows what is in the dark, and light dwells with him. Reminds us of John chapter 1, where Jesus is called the light of the world. To you, God of my ancestors, I give thanks and praise, because you have given me wisdom and power. So it ain't me, but you, God, have given this to me. Now you have made known to me what we requested, because you have made it known to us the king's matter. As a result of this, Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the men of Babylon, the wise guys. He went and said to him, do not destroy the wise guys of Babylon. Bring me before the king, and I will explain the dream and its meaning. Then Arioch immediately brought Daniel before the king, and this is what he said to him. I have found a man from the exiles of Judah who will make known the meaning to the king. Now, if you can put yourself back at that time, do you think this was impressive? No. We found a guy from the Judeans, and he's going to save you all? Well, the king said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, that's in the Babylonian. It's got the word Bel at the beginning. That's the same as Baal, if you know the Old Testament, fertility god. Are you able to make known to me the dream that I saw and its meaning? The king asked. Daniel answered before the king and said, the mystery of the king is asking, no wise man, no soothsayer, no magician or diviner are able to reveal. So this is not humanly possible. You gotta admire Daniel. This guy doesn't beat around the bush or sugarcoat anything. He tells the king, this is humanly impossible. However, there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in the later days. That's the substance of the dream. Something was revealed by God about what was going to go on in this difficult world in which the little kids are scared because the boogeyman is always around. You, your majesty, your thoughts upon your bed arouse about what will be after this, and the revealer of mysteries made known to you what will happen. So that's the substantive summary. The dream is about the future. But as for me, this mystery was not revealed to me because of wisdom that is in me more than in any other living being. So again, here we have the man of God making it very clear who gets the credit. Rather, it was revealed to me so that the meaning may be made known to your majesty, and that you may know the thoughts of your heart. You, your majesty, were looking, and there was a very large statue. Oh, Nebuchadnezzar says, that's exactly what I dreamed. I had forgotten. There was this big statue. That statue, which was large and whose brightness was extraordinary, was standing before you, and its appearance was frightening. You got a picture of that statue. The statue, its head was of fine gold. Its chest and arms were of silver. Its abdomen and thighs were of bronze. Its shins were of iron, and its feet were partly of iron and partly of clay. That descending order of precious metals was universally known in Babylon and all around the world. Gold is the most majestic of the metals. And by the way, God used that also when he built the tabernacle. If you want to read it in the book of Exodus, that same hierarchy of metals was also known to the Israelites. So nothing new here. You continued to look until a stone was cut. Notice, doesn't tell us who cut the stone. A stone was cut, but not by hands. And the Hebrew makes it clear we're talking here about your hands and my hands and the skillful hands of somebody in Babylon. No. It struck the statue, the stone did, on its feet that were of iron and clay, and it smashed them. So this is how dreams work, you know. The stone came and it hit those feet that were mixed clay and iron. But then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed and simultaneously became like chaff on a summer threshing floor. How many of you seen chaff on a threshing floor? Okay, you have. Not many people. And you throw it up in the air and the light stuff blows away, and that's how you preserve the kernels that you make wheat out of. That was, all farmers knew that in the ancient days. So this is what happened to this tremendous statue. Suddenly it is pulverized by a stone not cut by human hands. However, the stone that struck the statue became a great mountain, and it filled the entire earth. Now, I know some of you have been in Europe. Pastor, what mountain is that? That's the Matterhorn. But it is one picture of a mountain that I could use. But the picture is that this stone that was cut, doesn't say by whom, certainly not humans, it fills the whole earth. This is the dream, so we will tell its meaning before your majesty. You, your majesty, are the King of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given kingdom, power, strength, and glory. In all places where the sons of men, the beasts of the field, and the birds of the sky dwell, he has given them into your hand, and he has made you ruler over all of them. Oh, Nebuchadnezzar didn't mind hearing that. That's me. I'm the biggest shot there is. And you got that right. You are the head of gold. The next chapter, by the way, which is going to come up next week, Nebuchadnezzar makes a statue made out of pure gold, and he has everybody worship it. This dream made him full of himself. No question about it. Now, after you, another kingdom will arise that is inferior to you, inferior to gold, therefore silver. Then a third kingdom will arise that is of bronze and will rule the entire earth. So we have a progression here. In modern times, we would have to say that Britannia once ruled the waves. After the Second World War, it was supplanted by the United States. And now we're in a worldwide struggle to see whether China will become the next world power. This is not something that is strange to us. The fourth kingdom will be strong as iron, since iron crushes and shatters everything. That's a characterization of the fourth kingdom. Pretty brutal. So like iron that smashes, it will crush and smash all of these. And because you saw feet and toes partly of clay and partly of iron, it will be a divided kingdom. In other words, it's not a unified kingdom with a Nebuchadnezzar at the top like in the golden picture, but many power centers kind of amalgamated together. Keep that in mind because we know what this fourth kingdom was. The toes were of partly iron, partly of clay, meaning part of the kingdom will be strong and part of it will be brittle. We've got Babylon, then comes Persia, then comes Greece, and then comes Rome, right? Because you saw the iron mixed with common clay, the different parts of the kingdom will be mixed among the seed of men, and they will not adhere to one another. In other words, this fourth kingdom is brutal and powerful and strong, but brittle and diverse and easily broken up into pieces. In the days of those kings, the God of heaven, and this is important, please catch this, will establish a new kingdom that will never be destroyed, nor will the kingdom be left to another people. What did Jesus always tell the people? The kingdom of God is not of this world. Who's going to bring the kingdom? He will. But it's not going to be like these other four kingdoms. It's going to be the kingdom of God. It will crush and end all of these kingdoms, but it will be, and this is the key, established forever. This is the everlasting kingdom that Daniel could see coming in history as history unfolded. And just as you saw that from the mountain a stone was cut, but not by human hands, and it crushed the iron, bronze, clay, silver, and gold, a great God has made it known to you, your majesty, Nebuchadnezzar, what will happen after this, after you. The dream is sure, and its meaning is certain. Daniel makes no doubt about it. The progress of history from Daniel's time until the birth and the life, the death, resurrection of Jesus Christ will follow along these lines. And you, Nebuchadnezzar, have been given insight. Now, this picture, and this is a quotation from 1 Peter from the New Testament, and I think you've heard it, the living stone. Jesus is called the living stone. Was he cut out by human hands? No. I see a stone set in Zion, a chosen and precious cornerstone. That's another name the Bible uses for Jesus Christ in the fullness of time. Now to you who believe, this stone is precious, but to those who do not believe, the stone the builders has become the capstone, a stone that causes men to stumble, and a rock that makes them fall. This image, this picture is very biblical. The stone that crushes all the stupidity of this world and its false bravado and its false. It causes fear in people, nightmares, if you will. But it's a nothing because of the stone that God is going to produce in his Son, Jesus Christ. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell face down and paid homage to Daniel. Whoa! Something's happening here. Daniel at least has touched the king's heart. To pay homage to a Judean captive, big deal. He commanded that a gift and incense be offered to Daniel. The king said, "Truly your God is God of gods, Lord of kings, and revealer of mysteries, because you are able to reveal this mystery." I believe this is the beginning of the softening of Nebuchadnezzar's heart, and there's more to come. Now, I don't know what to compare it to, and yet every pastor will have stories to tell about people who were, humanly speaking, impossible to reach. Their hearts were hard. They would tell the pastor to his face, "You're wasting your time. I'm an atheist. I don't believe anything." By the way, that happened to me in my first congregation. A man brought his daughter to confirmation class, and she told me, right to my face, "You're wasting your time. I'm an atheist." Her dad said, "You're going to class anyway." By the grace of God, I baptized her and confirmed her during my ministry in Gainesville, Florida. So these things happen. People who are intractable in their unbelief can be softened by God's grace. Then the king promoted Daniel to the high position and gave him many great gifts. He made him ruler over the entire province of Babylon. This would be like over Washington, D.C. And chief prefect over all the wise men of all the wise guys who were put underneath Daniel. And Daniel sought from the king, and he appointed over the service of the province his 3 friends who had prayed with him for God to reveal the secret of this dream. So we have a situation now where Daniel is like prime minister, and his 3 friends are administrators of the province of Babylon. Not bad for 4 Judean people. Any questions about this story about the future? This is the one about the statue and the stone that filled the whole earth and was the kingdom that would smash all others. Chapter 7, I told you. Now this is again a vision of world history. It's down it's several chapters later, but it's the same story with different images. And it happened in 550. This is about 50 years later. And it's a dream that Daniel had, not Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar, by the way, is gone by now. In the first year of King Belshazzar of Babylon, he would be the 3rd ruler, not the 3rd ruler. I'm not going to get into that. I gave you a handout if you want to kind of bone up on Babylonian history, and another one on Persian history. It's on the table. Then he wrote down the dream. He related the main words. Daniel said, "I was looking in my vision in the night, and the winds of heaven were churning the great sea." Now, in the imagery of intertestamental Jews, the sea was a metaphor for humanity. And sometimes we use that, the sea of humanity. So the wind was churning up the people of this world, is basically what it means. 4 large beasts were coming up from the sea, each one different from the others. So again, we got 4, but now they're beasts. They're not parts of a statue. The first was like a lion, but it had the wings of an eagle. even back in those days, what did a lion stand for? The top of the food chain. Lions were the beasts of kings, of rulers. Nebuchadnezzar thought of himself as a lion. And it had wings, the wings of an eagle. Well, this is a dream creature. Lions don't have wings. But what are wings used for? Flying, getting around. So here's a king who is like the king of the beasts, and an eagle is sort of the king of the birds, and it's sort of mishmashed together. And it was lifted up from the earth and was made to stand on its feet like a man, and a man's mind was given to it. We're going to have that story where Nebuchadnezzar becomes like an animal and he eats grass. But by God's grace, and I believe that, and I think Nebuchadnezzar understood it was by grace, he was given back his mind. These are chapters that are coming. And he was restored. This is the first beast. Another second beast resembled a bear. So it looked like a bear, but it really wasn't a bear. And on one side it was raised up. So if you can think of a bear that kind of is raised up on one side was bigger than the other. So there's two sides, and one is more likely to give you a whelp with his, this is the picture. And then in its mouth there are three, now the Hebrew word is very hard to translate. Is it three ribs or three pieces of another animal? That's good enough for us. It is an animal that has been feasting on other animals. And it's got two sides. One is lifted up and one is not so high. And this is going to be a picture of Persia, which was, remember, the Medes and the Persians. The Medes were, they started out being senior partners, but soon became junior partners. And the Persians became the more powerful of the two. These are all images that are in Daniel's head. After this, I continued looking, and behold, another was like a leopard. It had 4 bird wings on its back. The beast had 4 heads, and dominion, that means rule, was given to it. This idea of, now, what does a leopard do? Fast. It runs fast. Yeah, and that's what the wings also say. This is a kingdom or a political movement that's going to move like wildfire. Now, I didn't give you a handout on the Greek Empire, but it was founded by a guy called Alexander the Great. And he only ruled for 10 years. And he took his Greek army and he went all the way to India. And just about anybody he ran into, he blew them away. And it was like blitzkrieg in the ancient world. The world had never seen anybody like Alexander. And when he died, his kingdom was divided into 4 lesser kingdoms. And that's why this leopard has 4 heads. And dominion was given to it. Either way, when you talk about what the Greeks did after the Persians in world history is amazing. I don't know, I lost the number, but I think there's something like 45 cities in Asia were named Alexandria after Alexander. And the largest city of Egypt, that ancient country, was called Alexandria. And this is Alexander. He put his stamp on everything. And he was tutored by none other than Aristotle, one of the Greek. He had quite an education. And he was a lucky but also skillful soldier. He used the Macedonian Phalanx, which is an amazing thing. It's long pole with a sharp end like that. And everybody lines up and you put your pole out there and the guy behind you puts his pole out there, and then you move ahead, and it was a military invention the world had never seen before. And when Alexander used it, there was nobody who could defeat him. You get the picture? A whole line of spears, and they're all held by people. You know, the guy behind you has his spear, and the guy behind him has a spear, and the guy behind him has a spear, and all these spears are pointing ahead. Anybody a rugby fan? You know the scrum? When Alexander's scrum came, nobody survived. Short story. After this I continued looking in the visions of the night, and behold, a fourth beast was frightening and terrible and exceedingly strong. It had large iron teeth. It devoured and crushed, and what was left it trampled with its feet. Now it was different from all the beasts that were before it, because it had 10 horns. In the Old Testament, a horn is an emblem of strength. So Rome was a force multiplier. We already know that the picture is of toes that are mixed of clay and of iron, brittle. But oh my goodness, when they got together and the Roman legions, they took on the Macedonians, the successors of Alexander, and they became the new world power. And Rome lasted a long time. The Western Empire fell in 476 AD, but the Eastern Empire did not fall until 1050, I forget exactly. Rome, and by the way, we call it today, if you take history, they call it the Byzantine Empire, but those people never called themselves Byzantines. They were Romans. So the Roman Empire to the world was something that lasted 1,000 years. Who got that idea in the last generation? Whose Reich was supposed to last 1,000 years? Yeah, Adolf. He was going to be the new Rome. Gives us some perspective. I was considering the horns when, behold, another horn, a little one, came up among them, and 3 of the previous horns were uprooted in front of it, and behold, eyes like human eyes were that of a horn, were in that horn, and a mouth speaking great things. There's something that we're going to see in this and in the future chapters, and that is that out of this Macedonian rule would come a human voice with strength, that's a horn, and with a mouth that's blasphemous, and becomes a template for the Antichrist of the New Testament, but also is a picture of what the Greeks did to the worship of the true God in Jerusalem. I just said a lot. For Daniel, the thing he prayed for every day when he faced Jerusalem was that temple be rebuilt. And remember, I told you that the morning and evening sacrifices would be reinstituted, because he knew that was God's way of preparing the world for the coming of the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. Daniel knew that. And with no temple and no sacrifices, Daniel was troubled. And we're going to find he's really going to be troubled about this. Well, the angels are going to reveal to Daniel that there will come a time, even another time, when the daily sacrifices in Jerusalem will be interrupted. And it happened when the Greeks sacrificed a pig on the altar of the temple. Can you imagine if you're Jewish? You're not Jewish. But there's something more disgusting, more awful than offering a pig on the altar of God. Now that's going to come in Daniel. We're going to see it. And that what Daniel is saying, that in this life, in this world, there will be powers that rise up to silence the truth of God and they will be anti, not means against, but in place of Christ. So God gave the Jewish people the morning and the evening sacrifice. There's going to be a Greek ruler who is going to he's going to call himself God revealed. Antiochus Epiphanes, if you've never heard of his name. Epiphanes, we know, in the Epiphany season, the Revelation. He believed he was God in human flesh. So he was in place of Christ. And what he did is offered a pig. So that's what this is about. I continue. Now we shift a little bit, and I looked upon the thrones that were set up. Thrones. If you know your Bible, when are thrones set up in the heavenly places? The book of Revelation, all the elders and all the Christians, yeah, all right? And the Ancient of Days, the only time this title comes up in the Bible. But isn't it kind of meaning, the Ancient of Days? Who the heck is that? Excuse me, I shouldn't say who the heck. Forgive my foul mouth. Who's the Ancient of Days? The one who's always been there. God the Father, from all eternity. All right? His clothes were white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. This description comes up in the book of Revelation as well. His throne was flames of fire, and the wheels were burning fire. That's Ezekiel. A river of fire flowed and came out of him. Thousands upon thousands, these are angels, attended him, and 10,000 upon 10,000 stood before him. The court was seated, and the books were opened. The books were opened because this was judgment. And who presides? Who's the Ancient of Days? God himself. I kept looking, and then because of the sound of the great words that the horn was speaking, remember this is blasphemy coming from that anti-Christian horn. I kept looking until the beast was killed and its body was destroyed and was given to the burning fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion had been taken away from them, but an extension of life was given to them for a period of time. In other words, the powers of this world were going to be, just like the other dream, smashed, not by a stone, but by the power of the Ancient of Days. And I kept looking in the visions of the night, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like the Son of Man was coming. Does that ring a bell in your... Jesus said to Caiaphas at his trial, "You will see the Son of Man coming on clouds of glory." Pastor, I don't know which gospel that's in. That's taken from Daniel. So when the judgment comes, all right, now listen. He came to the Ancient of Days, brought before him. To him was given dominion, honor, and a kingdom. All peoples, nations, and languages will worship him. His dominion is an eternal dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom will not be destroyed. All right, the earlier vision of Nebuchadnezzar, this was the stone that filled the world. Here we have the Son of Man. Jesus often referred to himself as that. Who came not to be served, but to serve humanity. And to him was given all power, dominion on heaven and earth. Daniel knew this through this dream. Daniel, my spirit was distressed within my body. I think if I had a dream, I would get a little bit upset too. And the visions of my head disturbed me. Remember, this was about 50 years after the other dream about the statue. I approached one of those standing there, and I asked him the truth about this, so he spoke to me and made known to me the meaning of the words. In chapter 9, verse 21 of Daniel, we're told that this was none other than Gabriel. There are two angels mentioned in the Bible. One is Gabriel. What news did Gabriel bring? What's that? The birth of Christ. Gabriel came to Mary and said, that holy thing that is growing inside of you is the Son of the Most High. So Gabriel is going to be talking to Daniel again in chapter 9. These great beasts that are four kings who will arise from the earth. All right, now here we have the interpretation. But the saints of the Most High will receive the kingdom, and they will possess the kingdom forever, forever, and ever. In Hebrew, it's just that emphatic. So now, are you worried about nuclear war like I was when I crawled underneath my desk at Calvary, Zanesville? Or are you worried about COVID-19 or whatever it is today? Just remember, Daniel was promised that the kingdom that was given to Christ will be forever and ever and ever. Then I desired to be certain about the fourth beast that was different from all of them. It was very frightening. Its teeth were of iron and its claws were of bronze. It devoured and crushed, and what was left it trampled out with its feet. I also desired to be certain about the 10 horns on its head, and the other horn that came up, and the 3 that fell before it. Oh my goodness. Moreover, that horn had eyes and a mouth speaking great things, and its appearance was greater than its companions. This is the one in place of Christ, the one who has power, horn. And it's going to rise up and it's going to speak blasphemous things, and it's going to be against the Lord and his Christ. I kept looking, and that horn made war with the saints and prevailed over them. We know from the Bible that the powers of this world up until the last day will sometimes appear to be invincible. The Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given in favor of the saints. Then the time came, and the saints took possession of the kingdom. This is a foreshadowing of the eternal judgment when Christ, the Son of Man, comes on clouds of glory. Exactly what Jesus said to Caiaphas at his trial. This is what he said. The fourth beast is the fourth kingdom that will be on the earth. It will be different from all the kingdoms. It will devour the entire earth, trample it, and smash it. Now, I love history. Pastor? Times and half a time. Which means amen. But we really have finished the story.
Yeah, we're close to time if you want to just wrap it up.
As for the 10 horns, from it the kingdom, 10 kings will arise, and another will arise after them. It will be different. It will humble 3 kings. It will speak. This is where you get into all kinds of speculation. Who in the world are these guys, and how does this relate to the end of time? This is where you have whole church bodies created out of such verses. It will intend to change times and the law. That's a key thing that Paul brings up in the book of Thessalonians. That the mark of Antichrist, the mark of the one who is against Christ, who takes Christ's place, as that it changes the teaching of God. That's what law, I wish we would have translated law as teaching, the teaching of Moses, but teaches and changes times. If you know church history at all, you know that one of the things that's happened in the Christian church is that there's all kinds of movements to upgrade what we know and to change times and particulars. All right. Then the court will be seated, and his dominion will be taken away of the Antichrist. But the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the heavens will be given to the people, the saints of the Most High, because his kingdom is an eternal kingdom. All right. There you have Revelation, where the seventh angel in Revelation says, the kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord. What great musical piece has those words? Handel's Messiah. Yeah, it's the grand flourish at the end. The kingdom of this world has become the kingdom of his Christ. It's a great, I don't know, I love it. This was the end of the matter. I, Daniel, greatly did my thoughts alarm me. My appearance changed, and I kept the matter to myself. Are you totally overwhelmed? Well, don't dwell on the little points, some of which maybe even Daniel hasn't told us. Pastor.